Unmasked, Episode 10. The Words I Wish I Could Say. There are so many things I wish I could say to you, not because I think you'd finally understand, not because I think you'd suddenly feel guilt or remorse or shame, but because for so long you had all the power in the room, and I had none. For years, I swallowed words that burned in my chest. I stayed quiet to keep the peace. I stayed silent because anything I said would be twisted, mocked, dismissed, or used against me later. And that's one of the hardest parts of abuse. It's not just what they do to you, it's what they stop you from saying. It's the version of you that gets buried just to survive. I used to wonder why you asked so much about my past, why you wanted to know the painful bits, why you acted soft when I spoke about things that had hurt me before you, why you pretended to care. At the time, I thought maybe it was because you loved me. Maybe it was because you wanted to understand me. Maybe it was because you wanted to protect the broken parts of me. But that wasn't it, was it? You were gathering ammunition. You were learning where the wounds were so you could press on them later. You took the most painful parts of my life and turned them into weapons. You took grief and trauma and vulnerability, and instead of handling them with care, you used them to destroy me. You told me my deceased parents hated me. You told me they'd be glad they weren't here. Just think about how cruel that is, how deeply rotten somebody has to be to look at a person they claim to love and use dead parents as part of the attack. You said it because you knew it would hurt. People don't just want to win an argument. They want to emotionally annihilate the person in front of them. You told me the abuse I had suffered before was my fault too, that I deserved it, that I asked for it, that no wonder people treated me like that, and that says everything about you. Because abusers love to rewrite reality. They take your pain and frame it as proof that there is something wrong with you, rather than something deeply wrong with them. That's what emotional abuse does. It doesn't just hurt your feelings, it starts to rewire your mind. It makes you question your worth, your memories, your instincts, your sanity. When someone repeats over and over that every bad thing that has ever happened to you is your fault, eventually a part of you starts to wonder if they might be right. That's how the trap works. You laughed at me when I was struggling. You laughed at my distress. You laughed in my face when I cried. Not a nervous laugh, not discomfort, not awkwardness, cruel laughter, deliberate laughter. You made childish voices at me and mocked me, called me attention-seeking, made me feel pathetic for reacting to pain you caused. And after enough times, I stopped crying on the outside. That's something people don't always understand. They think if someone isn't visibly falling apart, then maybe it isn't that bad. But sometimes the crying stops because something in you shuts down. Sometimes you become quiet, not because you're okay, but because you learn there is no safety in showing pain. You learn that tears become entertainment. You learn that vulnerability becomes a punchline. So you go numb, you stay still, you keep your face blank, and inside you are screaming. You made fun of my scars. Even saying that out loud feels sickening, because those scars were never something to mock. They were evidence of pain. Evidence that I had been drowning for a long time. Evidence that I was trying to survive in the only way I knew how at the time. And instead of seeing hurt, you saw another opportunity to degrade me. You called me stupid, attention-seeking, crazy. You stripped something deeply painful of all humanity and turned it into another way to humiliate me. And while doing that, you told me I should end my life. You told me the reasons why. You told me everyone hated me. You told me my children would be better off without me. Then when I was low, when I was broken, when I was suicidal, you mocked me for that too. That's the part people need to understand. Abuse isn't always just explosive rage. Sometimes it is calculated destruction. Sometimes it is watching somebody mentally collapse and choosing to push harder. You called me crazy so many times that I started to hear it in my own head. You said I imagined the abuse. You said you never touched me. You said none of it happened. You said it was all in my head. That I needed medication, that I was delusional, that I was unstable, and this is what gaslighting does. It creates a split between what you know and what you are being told. It forces you to live in two realities at once, the reality of what your body is experiencing and the reality your abuser is trying to sell you. So there I was, looking in the mirror at bruises, living in scarves, flinching when you came near me. My body knew the truth before my mind could fully admit it. My nervous system knew, my fear knew, the bruises knew, But after enough lies, enough minimizing, enough cruelty, I found myself staring at visible injuries and still wondering if maybe I really was the problem. Maybe I was overreacting, maybe I was broken, maybe I was crazy. That is what prolonged abuse does to a person. It makes the impossible start to feel possible. It makes obvious harm feel debatable. It makes victims defend the very people destroying them. It turns survival into confusion. The words I wish I could say now are these. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were not confused. You were not misunderstood. You were not just stressed. You were not pushed. You chose cruelty again and again. You chose to target wounds you knew were already there. You chose to mock pain. You chose to deny harm while the evidence sat on my skin. You chose to make me feel worthless, unstable, unlovable, and disposable. But you were wrong about me. I was never crazy. I was traumatized. I was surviving. I was reacting to abuse. I was carrying more than anyone should have to carry, and still getting up, still parenting, still functioning, still trying, still hoping that one day you would become the person you pretended to be. You were wrong when you said everyone hated me. You were wrong when you said my children would be better off without me. You were wrong when you said I deserved what happened to me. You were wrong when you tried to convince me that my pain made me weak. What it actually made me was someone who endured more than you will ever admit you put me through. And the truth is, the words I wish I could say are no longer really for you. Because people like you don't listen. They don't absorb truth unless it benefits them. They don't care about the damage once they can no longer control the narrative. So maybe these words are for me. Maybe they're for the version of me who stood in front of mirrors, looking at bruises and doubting herself. Maybe they're for the woman who learned to cry without making noise. Maybe they're for the woman who was told she was nothing, over and over, until she almost believed it. And maybe they're for anyone listening who has heard the same things, who has been told they are crazy, who has been mocked for their pain, who has been blamed for the abuse they suffered, who has been made to feel like their trauma is something shameful, who has looked at evidence with their own eyes and still questioned themselves because someone else was so committed to denying the truth. To that person, you are not imagining it. You are not weak. You are not pathetic. You are not the things they called you. And the fact that you are still here means they did not break all of you. There is something they never understand. They think if they humiliate you enough, silence you enough, crush you enough, then your voice is gone forever. But sometimes your voice comes back. Not soft, not apologetic, not afraid. And when it does, it tells the truth.